Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. And today we have a special guest, Bryan.
Hello.
Hello. Bryan, please introduce yourself.
All right. I guess I'll do the Japanese first. So, Bryanと申します。日系アメリカ人の4世の日系アメリカ人なんですけど、現在は岐阜県、日本の岐阜県に住んでいます。もう5年近くになりますけど、生まれ育てはアメリカのオレゴン州で、日本語の勉強は一応大学に入ってから勉強を始めましたけど、キャリアとしては、最初はグラフィックデザイナーとして働いていましたけど、今、岐阜県で観光促進の仕事をやってます。で、何やってるかというと、SNS の発信とか、いろいろな岐阜県の海外にアピールすること、いろいろな事業サポートをしています。翻訳とか通訳とか、海外のなんかトラブルフェア、旅行博みたいなイベントに参加して、そういういろんな、なんていう情報発信とかやってます。
はい、ありがとうございます。So we met in LA, right? When you were working at the convention center.
Yes, so we actually met at a
travel show?
Fair. Yeah. And let's see, I was at the Gifu booth, so
and I was at Miyagi booth. And then the previous year I was working at Ibaragi booth.
Yes. Yes, because I think we met twice actually. Yeah, so for my job I do a lot of tourism promotions and I promote prefecture.
I think it was right before COVID situation got worse, right?
Yeah, so that last time we met, that was in, I want to say February.
Yeah, February. So it was right before COVID.
Yeah.
And then we got like kind of like connected because we have like similar experience, but opposite. Because me, born and raised in Japan, and then you, born and raised in the US, and then you switch. And now you're in Japan, and then now I'm in the US. Yeah, so I wanted to ask questions. So the question number one would be, what was your experience like growing up in the US?
Let's see, I grew up pretty much as, I didn't really have that much like knowledge about my Japanese, my Nikkei, my Japanese side until I went to college. My dad is third generation Japanese, so he can understand Japanese, but he can't speak it. So I grew up just speaking English, and I kind of identified more as just like a Asian American rather than like Japanese. And then once I went into college, I kind of met more of like the people of Nikkei descent, because where I grew up was very rural, and maybe there was like 3 or 4 other like Nikkei people kind of, but no one actually could speak Japanese. And then there was a couple other students of other Asian ethnicities, but it was a very small percentage, mostly Hispanic and Caucasian. So it was kind of a interesting experience. Yeah, I wouldn't say, I mean, I feel like things have changed a lot now, but I never really experienced growing up anything like bullying or like maybe some like a little bit of teasing or something, but wasn't like anything.
Okay, like, that's good.
Serious. Yeah, I feel like maybe I was lucky, but maybe not, but maybe that's just how it was back then.
And then the next question I wanted to ask is that number 2, how did you become interested in learning Japanese?
Yes, so because my dad is the one with the Japanese heritage, but he didn't really do anything like we didn't have like any traditions or anything that we did.
Oh, really?
For Japan. I mean, maybe for dinner sometimes he would cook like yakisoba or like fried rice, which isn't even Japanese, but just like something like that. I was originally interested in Japanese because, as I said, my grandparents were, so my grandpa was second generation Japanese, so his parents were the first ones that came, but he married, before World War II, he went back to Japan to become a doctor, and then had married a Japanese woman over there. And then he went back to the US like 10 or 15 years after the war. And then so my grandma was Japanese and they always spoke in Japanese. I mean, she spoke a little bit of English, but I don't think she got super very good at it, maybe.
So your grandparents made you interested in learning Japanese?
Yeah, they lived in Oceanside, California, and we'd go visit in the summer sometimes.
Oh, nice.
So that's pretty much the only time I like ever experienced like maybe like authentic Japanese culture. That kind of got me interested in wanting to learn Japanese. And then
you learned Japanese in college?
Yeah, I always like I said, I wanted to learn it, but growing up where I was in Oregon, there wasn't really much of an opportunity to learn Japanese. Like for my high school, it's just like Spanish and German. So it was like, well, I can just study, because you have to study a language in high school to go to college. So I studied Spanish for 2 years and then was like, if the college I go to will probably have Japanese. So I got into college and then was able to finally start studying Japanese.
And then you ended up working in Japan.
Yeah, so I studied abroad in college for a semester, and then after I graduated from university in the US, I decided to go to a language school for a year in Tokyo. And then after that, I applied to the program that I'm in now.
Wow, that's amazing. Like you started learning Japanese since college, and then now you're like able to use it, you know, at the business level. I think it's really impressive.
Really? Yeah, I'm definitely not, in my own opinion, I'm not very, I'm surrounded by Japanese people, so I hear it spoken natively. And then whenever I hear myself like speak Japanese, I'm always like, I'm like cringing and stuff at my own Japanese. But that's probably one of the things that I enjoy the most. Was at first it was like a challenge, but I'm able to kind of interact and actually be a part of the society in some way.
Yeah, that makes me want to ask you another question. So number
Sorry,
three.
I just keep going.
Yeah. Question number 3 is that what were your biggest struggle and the greatest experience living in Japan?
So my biggest struggle was probably, part of it was language, but most of it would be the differences in culture, I guess, in the way of thinking. Because, I'm not saying not all Japanese people think a certain way, but even if you can communicate in Japanese, you're not for me, I'm not communicating as a Japanese person would, even though I'm using the same language. It's kind of, I have like my own way that I'm thinking in my head, and it's not always a way that like a Japanese person could understand. So that was the most difficult, but after being here for I've been in Gifu for like almost 5 years now, so I've been able to get used to that at some point, and I can kind of expect or guess what the other person is thinking most of the time.
So also, like, are you talking about like people like react differently depending on like where they're from and depending on their background?
Just like the differences between how maybe, not all Americans like me think a certain way, but we might talk a certain way and our communication style is different. So at first, especially in Japan, it's just like you don't say everything like directly, or or you don't say it, maybe they would think of it as aggressive, like kind of just those kind of differences. Even though you're speaking the same language, you might not be like speaking it in a manner that Japanese people are used to hearing, or like maybe, and so it's hard to communicate maybe.
Yeah, that's hard. I kind of like see it as like English is like pretty like straightforward language, and Japanese is not. So I can see how it would be difficult.
There's a lot of talking around what you're actually wanting to talk about, and
and then you're like, what are you guys trying to say, right?
Yeah, it's like what actually does this person want to say? Because sometimes I do like interpreting and stuff, and then I'm interpreting for like maybe people from like Europe or like Spanish people, and I'm interpreting for like a local person from Gifu, and it's like they might be asking a question, and the Japanese person isn't like answering it
like straightforward.
Yeah. And then trying to like interpret that into something that what the person I'm interpreting for is kind of difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do
But I
work
mean,
as an interpreter as well, so I can feel your struggle.
yeah. Yeah, that was a struggle. But
Mhm.
I guess kind of before I said what the biggest, the greatest experience was kind of being actually able to live in Japanese society, I guess, and not just like live, but like able to communicate and get around and stuff. But it's not just like Japanese, but culture, being able to do this in Japan, but being able to do it in foreign country, because before I came to Japan, I hadn't really actually been to. I'd been to like Mexico and Canada, but not actually like lived. So seeing a culture that's so different was like kind of like really eye-opening for me when I first came abroad as a exchange student. So when I first came, and then where I am now is kind of like, now that I look at it, it's like completely, I'm like almost completely different. So kind of interesting.
What do you mean completely different? Like your mindset or?
My mindset, my experiences, like my skills, I guess, my Japanese skills. And when you first come to Japan, you don't really know what to expect or anything. But I guess now I'm kind of used to everything now as well. So
Yeah. Okay. So since you lived in the US and then you now live in Japan, I'm curious, like, would you like to continue living in Japan or would you like to come back to the US?
Well, I've always wanted to go back. I want to go back to the US at some point. I'm just not certain when, because like my family, everyone is in the US. So probably similar to how you feel. I want to go back to be close to my family. But for now, I'm happy in Japan because I guess I really like the lifestyle. It's very safe and you don't have to worry about a lot of things. I can go jogging at night when it's dark and it's perfectly fine. And just little things like that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. In the US, it's not really, I mean, especially as a woman, for myself, I don't feel safe like going out at night. But even for a guy, I guess you don't feel safe.
Well, I mean, it depends where you are. But yeah, even if you're like a guy, you wouldn't just, I mean, you can walk around like your neighborhood or something, but like go on a jog somewhere far away or something.
Yeah. I see your pictures like you post on your Instagram, you know, the scenery of Gifu. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, Gifu is a really nice place. Coming from Oregon, it's like I feel it's pretty similar because there's so much nature and a lot of outdoor activities that you can do and lots of places to take pictures. There's so many like photographers and stuff that come here and stuff.
And it's amazing that you're able to like promote how wonderful Gifu is, you know, going overseas.
That's one of the reasons why I like my job so much, because I feel like people from here, they don't really understand how beautiful of a place it is. Even Japanese people, if you ask them like, what's Gifu? And it's like, what is Gifu? Maybe Shirakawa-go and Takayama, but that's it. But there's like so much more, and I feel like it takes someone who's not from there to fully appreciate. I mean, there's some people here that really do appreciate that, but most for the standard Japanese person, they may not know very much.
As a Japanese person, I really like appreciate the kind of work you do because you have like a Japanese background and you learned the language and then you went to Japan and then now you're promoting Japanese tourism and especially like towards like the overseas, you know, so people who are like living in like other countries can like know about it and then actually come and then see and enjoy the, you know, the beautiful, you know, the site. I think it's really impressive. And then I want to ask you about the language question again. And then, so the first question will be like, when you were learning a new language, what was your biggest struggle? And then how did you overcome it?
For me, learning Japanese, everything was a struggle. Well, I was very academic as a student. Taking everything in took a lot more effort than actually remembering it. But not giving up, I would say, is once you stop using a language that you're just trying to study, it's not fully cemented in your head yet, like your native languages. So it's something that you will forget over time. But so just continuing the study and find something that works for you, I guess. I hear a lot of people study by watching like anime and like playing video games, and yeah, it's just finding something that you enjoy so that it allows you to continue it, I would say, over long term, rather than just like a short 6-week course or something. Yeah, which I mean might help, but you might not be able to continue that kind of studying lifestyle. Turn it into a lifestyle rather than like studying a new language. Like turn it into like a lifestyle. Like make it part of your daily routine, and do it so often that it's kind of just like eating breakfast, because that's the best way to continue, I would think.
Okay. What was your motivation? Because I know that people struggle to get motivated every day and for like a longer period.
Like I said, I didn't really have the chance to study Japanese. For me, once I was able to study Japanese, it was kind of just like, oh, I'm finally able to do something that I've wanted to do forever but couldn't. So that at least kept me motivated for a long time. And then when I actually studied abroad in Japan, I kind of got to see kind of how, like the background of everything and see how it works. Because up until then, I was able to meet with like exchange students or study maybe from like textbooks, but not actually see it in person. So when you actually see it in person, it's kind of just like, oh, it's not just something in like a textbook or something, but it's actual language that a lot of people use, and it's part of a culture. It's a bigger entity than you. I think that's one of the things where English is kind of not fully realized here in Japan, well, by a lot of younger students maybe, who just see it as testing. So maybe if they saw it or were able to realize it or see it as something more than just like a test, then it would be a lot easier for people
to actually like experience it, right? Like experience the language, not just like studying it, I guess.
Yeah, experience it as like a language and as kind of like a different culture, like because a lot of other countries, it's like part of their culture and it's how people communicate, and it's a lot bigger than textbook or test, I guess. I don't know. That's just how they transcribed it onto paper, I guess. But it goes so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I think so. It makes it more interesting too, just like looking at the textbooks. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so the last question I wanted to ask you is that what advice would you like to give to your younger self?
I would say study Spanish harder.
Study Spanish? Oh, because you have to use Spanish too?
Yeah, well, in high school I did 2 years, but maybe how like most kids here are with English, I wasn't really like interested in it. I was just kind of doing it, and I studied for 2 years, and I feel like with the environment I was in, because there were so many Hispanic students, I could have actually been able to make a pretty fluent speaker if I had actually tried. Like I've met so many not Hispanic people, but a lot of Spanish people here in Japan. And岐阜is a very popular place for Spanish visitors, so I would have been able to communicate with a lot more people. Just being able to speak another language, you're able to communicate with so many more people. So I kind of regret not taking Spanish as seriously as I would now.
So take advantage of your own opportunity and then study hard.
Yeah, and then I would have also said start studying Japanese earlier, but who knows if that would have been possible.
Yeah, I mean the timing is important too.
Yeah.
When you're like raising a child, when you force it, sometimes it's not fun for them, and then they lose interest.
Yeah, or so they end up hating it or something.
Yeah.
Which I see a lot as well.
Yeah, so study hard.
Study hard, but not just study hard, but if I had been able to see, I feel like I didn't appreciate languages as much as I do now. The power of language, so being able to communicate with other people. So if I had known that at a younger age, then maybe I would have had more interest in it.
Okay, great. Well, it has been great talking to you, Bryan. Yeah, is there like any social media we can follow you or you want to promote?
Sure. If you want to learn about Gifu in English, you can follow the social media that I do for work, which is Go Gifu. I take a lot of photos for work, so I've started a photo. It's kind of more just a portfolio right now. It's kind of more just like a personal, like just kind of documenting my experiences and
Yeah, you have
Gifu.
amazing pictures. You're a really good photographer.
It's kind of something similar to Japanese where I'd always wanted to try to do it, but didn't really have the opportunity to. And then I'm traveling around all these great places. So that one is Bu, like Budayam, BU _ photos with a Z.
So go follow Bryan on Instagram or like his Gifu page. Thank you so much, Bryan, for your time. And I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with Bryan, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much, Bryan.
Bye. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.